Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with our series, Dumbfounding Definitions, Dizzying Distinctions, and Diabolical Doctrines, series sorting through some of the jargon of philosophy. In this video we're going to be looking at what is the philosophy of race. Now, the philosophy of race is a cross-cutting area of study that touches on questions of metaphysics, ethics, and justice. This area of study also crosses over into disciplines outside of philosophy, like anthropology, politics, economics, biology, law, and medicine. In this video, we'll cover questions about race that philosophy focuses on, though these questions have implications for all disciplines that study the subject. This is just an overview. In future videos, we'll look at the specific answers to some of these questions in greater depth. This is just to cover some of the questions that the philosophy of race asks. So, one of the central questions to the philosophical study of race is whether race exists or not. And if it does, what kind of thing it is. The Ghanaian philosopher here, Kwame Appiah, is famous for looking into some of these questions. Generally, the answer to the metaphysical question is divided into four positions: racial naturalism, racial skepticism, racial constructivism, and racial population naturalism. A full treatment of these positions will await a future video, but in brief, racial naturalism is the traditional view that races have biobehavioral traits, which have biological, heritable traits shared by all and only members of a given race, that lead to predispositions to cultural behavior and character traits. This view is broadly rejected by scientists and philosophers, which has given rise to the remaining three positions, which reject naturalism, but do so in very different ways. So, other metaphysical questions involving race include issues of the distinction between race and ethnicity, whether race is determined by an individual's personal identification, how society identifies them or views them, or some fact about their biology or upbringing, or relationally determined by both an individual and those around them, or some other combination of these multiple factors. If someone has black parents but quote-unquote passes for white, what is their true race? That's a metaphysical question about race that the philosophy of race studies. There are also a range of ethical questions which are examined in the philosophy of race. These include questions around what racism is, and whether concepts of race are immoral to begin with and should be discarded, that's racial eliminativism, or that these concepts are useful and at least morally acceptable and should be preserved, racial conservatism. And finally, there are a range of issues within political philosophy which cross over with the philosophy of race, including questions of affirmative action and whether affirmative action is just or moral, reparations, identity politics, nationalism, cosmopolitanism, and more. These areas of study also overlap in questions of justice in the law, policing, and sentencing. Stay tuned for upcoming videos on some of these issues in the philosophy of race. Let me know in the comments below, which of these issues do you think is the most interesting and which would you want us to cover first? Watch this video and more here at Carneades.org. Subscribe if you like this content and you want to see more, and if you want to stay up to date with the other videos we do on the philosophy of race. And stay skeptical, everybody.